Hi folks, Harry Frank from Red Giant here, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you a plugin called Fractal Background from Red Giant Universe. Fractal Background is a plugin that generates a wide variety of backgrounds based on fractal noise. So let's show this in action. I'm going to apply the fractal background to some sort of video clip. Now here in Premiere, a good thing to do is to simply create a new black video clip. So I can just drop this in my timeline, drag it out, go to my effects and locate fractal background inside universe generators in my video effects. Let's drag this onto the video and hit play, and we'll see that we've got a slowly evolving soft fractal noise. If looping is important to you, the first value right here at the top is the loop duration, and some of the values in here will actually be dependent on this loop duration, making sure that everything nicely loops. I'll set this to, let's say, 10 seconds for now. Now, like many Universe plugins, this has a preset browser where we can visually browse a number of presets that ship with the plugin. You'll notice that there are both fractal presets here at the top, and then if you scroll down, you'll see a number of color map presets. You can use these independently of each other. So if you like the color map but want to swap out for a different type of background, you can do so. So let's get into designing your own, or maybe customizing an existing preset. So I'm going to hit reset here at the top and get myself back to the default values of fractal background. The first parameter that will change things for you is this scale. And this is actually a fractal noise scale. And it's very common for fractal noise values to make the fractal actually smaller as the scale gets higher. The next several parameters tie directly into the fractal noise generator itself. So the angle itself is not a layer transformation. It's actually controlling the angle of the fractal noise itself. And this is pretty cool when we get into things like the aspect. Let me jump over brightness and contrast because those are pretty self-explanatory. But if I get into the aspect, I can stretch things out. Let's say I set this aspect almost to 0, and this will flatten it out in one direction. If I go back to this angle, I can maybe make it slanted, or I can make it horizontal. Let's set the angle to 0. And if I hit play, we'll see these sort of wide shimmers. If I want a little bit more detail, I can go to this scale and turn it up and add more detail to the fractal noise. Let me hit reset again and show you the scroll functions. So this is controlling the X and Y position over time. But because the fractal noise itself is set to loop, we can set this scroll to, let's say, scroll in the X or Y axis, and this will still automatically loop. So I can set a horizontal scroll, or if I zero this out, set it to a vertical scroll. And again, this is independent of the evolution of the fractal noise. So how it slowly evolves over time is the animation speed right here. So I can turn this up if I'd like to have it go a little bit faster. In fact, let me zero out that scroll. Now, the rotations controls how many full rotations this fractal will rotate inside the loop duration. So a shorter loop duration of, let's say, 5 seconds will mean that this will spin pretty quickly. Might not be very usable for a background. But if I set this to 30 seconds, this will do one full rotation over the course of 30 seconds. Probably a lot more usable. In fact, we can probably bring this animation speed down quite a bit. So without even changing the fractal type, you've seen a wide variety of fractal noise backgrounds I've made. Let's set this rotations to 0. And again, we could maybe play with the scroll here. So let's go into the fractal type and take a peek at what else we've got here. We've got a number of different fractal algorithms, and probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to start mathematically explaining what these do. It doesn't really matter. I encourage you to explore and play with the different looks that you can achieve with each fractal type. But what I will say is that some of these fractal types can be pretty radically different from each other in terms of what brightness values work well. So with this cellular fractal type, the contrast setting of 1.5 is actually pretty extreme for it. So if I turn this down, in fact, let's bring that aspect back to 1 so we can see what's going on here. Cellular is a fairly organic looking type of fractal. Warp has its own pretty unique kind of look, and IQ kind of looks like a almost like a 3D cell kind of look. Now, with everything I've shown you so far, even changing these fractal types, let's say if I set this to billowed, we've so far left the complexity of every single one of these set to a value of 1. Fractal noise is generally layers of noise stacked on top of each other. Each layer of noise is scaled and mixed in with the previous layer. So you can start with one layer of noise, but generally fractal noise has many layers of noise stacked on top. So this complexity is exactly how many layers of noise we are stacking on top. If I move this from 1 up to 2 to 3 to 4, you can see more detailed layers of noise starting to stack on top of my existing first layer, my base layer of noise. I'm going to experiment with my contrast here, and maybe a little bit with the brightness. Now, built into the plugin is an invert feature, so we can simply invert the entire thing, just like so. And there's also some basic blur controls for either blurring vertically or horizontally. And this is apparent in some of the presets like this defocus one. This is using a pretty heavy vertical blur to achieve its effect. And you can customize the colors by choosing different colors for both the shadows, midtones, and highlights. Or, like I said, use a preset from the preset browser here. The last section I'd like to show you is this text area section down here at the bottom. Often with backgrounds, you're putting them behind something, which is kind of the definition of a background. Now, often we have text that goes on top of our background. Now, there can be moments in time where perhaps you have brighter areas of your background that start to fight with your text a little bit, and it's very common to put some sort of solid backdrop behind the text to make it a bit easier to read. Now, we can do that with all these controls here. There's actually a few presets built in to make things easy for you. The first one is called the hard backdrop. We can control the overall height, feathering, and opacity of this backdrop, as well as its color. You can shift it one way or the other using a horizontal or vertical offset. An alternative to the hard backdrop is the soft fuzz. It creates a soft fuzzy area for your backdrop, and there's also a lower third preset that basically cuts out the video and leaves a area of the background in the bottom of your screen. Also pretty useful. So that is a Fractal Background from Red Giant Universe. My name is Harry Frank. Thank you so much for watching.